is Rose Sang, and I will be moderating today's session. We have two ladies, experts in their respective fields, who will be able to walk us through this journey. So just before we start, just some housekeeping matters. We request that everybody is on mute until a point where you need to ask any questions. We have a chat button at the bottom of the screen, so please put your comments, questions, and we will filter them to the respective panelists this morning. So to kick us off, allow me to invite our chair, Ms. Catherine, to give some opening remarks. And then we can be able to start and introduce the panelists. So karibu sana, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Rose. Please allow me to join without the camera. I'm somewhere at the coast, so I don't want people to feel jealous. Don't worry, I'm here on a working trip.
Okay.
So ladies, so happy to have you on this program. I think one of the things that I can say is that one can never tire of mentorship. And the reason why one cannot tire of mentorship is because we learn every day. We learn every day from experiences, our own experiences, as well as from the experiences of other people. And so the mentors that we are putting together for you are so willing to share of themselves. And I hope that you too are willing to share of yourselves. And that's because mentorship is not about receiving. Mentorship is really about giving and receiving, because you're already full. So if you were only to talk about receiving, then there's no space to receive anymore. You too have to be willing to give so that you can receive. And so ladies, as you start this journey, I want to encourage you to really be open about the things that are challenging you, to really be open about the issues that you're dealing with, so that you can allow other people to share with you their experiences, to share with you their learnings, so that you don't have to go through that whole journey yourself on your own. I do hope that the mentorship journey will be of use to you. I do hope that you will learn from other people, even as they learn from themselves. Now, one thing that I want to also encourage you to do is to ensure that the mentors that you receive open up their networks to you. So please ensure that not only are the mentors opening up their networks to you, that you also are reaching out to your colleagues on this journey so that they open up those doors for you. Because mentorship is also about being enabled to reach places that you would ordinarily not have reached. So I do want to wish you the very best in this mentorship journey as you learn from each other, as you also share your own experiences and help somebody else. I do wish you a very good, I think it's 6 months, Rose, a very good 6 months ahead of you. Please be open to learning, and please be open to teaching as well. Thank you very much, and wishing you the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, for those opening remarks. Indeed, they say a mentor is someone who sees more talent and ability within you than you see for yourself, and helps get the best out of you. So at Women on Boards, we have put together a mentorship program, as Catherine mentioned, and we'll just take you through a quick overview of what that program looks like, some of the areas we'll be covering before we can get into this morning's panel discussion. So Kantai, do we have the 2 slides that we talked about? Just so that we can alert the new members and walk them through what that journey will look like. Okay, so as Catherine mentioned, we do have a 6-month journey around the mentorship. We do realize that perhaps there could be topics that we struggle with as members and as those who are aspiring to get into boards, and even for those who are within boards. So we've set aside 6 months over the next couple of months to be able to go through this journey and have more intimate conversations with our brand ambassadors. So today marks the first session, and we will be having a conversation around developing leadership in boards, aspects to do with culture. How do we lead around generations? Why does diversity matter? And is it just a gender issue, or is there more to diversity? We'll be listening to our speakers this morning, and I will be introducing them shortly. The next session will be taken over by Rita Kavasha. You know, Rita is the CEO of Isuzu, and she also sits on several boards. So she'll be taking us through board dynamics, what makes a great board, how do you build a cohesive and inclusive team, and how do you find common ground, especially when there's conflict. So that should be an interesting discussion to be able to have. And Rita will be talking about her experiences, having sat on several boards here as well. That session will be held in December, and then we'll move into January. And Flora Mutahi, who's again held several leadership positions and board positions as well, KEPSA and Kenya Association of Manufacturers, she'll be talking about effective board leadership. What does that look like? What defines an effective board leader? What happens when you have leadership gaps within boards, and how should you then be able to handle that? So that, again, should be a very interesting discussion as we get into January. In February, we'll have Dr. Julius Kipngetich, who's the group CEO and MD of Jubilee Insurance. He'll be talking about boards that deliver. How do you balance between compliance and ensuring that you gain a competitive advantage as a board? How do you turn boards into high-performing teams? And within the new normal, what are the skill sets that we need to be thinking about acquiring? How do we learn and unlearn what we know? So Julius is quite thought-provoking. We've had several sessions with him within the forums on women on boards. So again, February should look like a very interesting month. As we just come out of Valentine, we'll be having the discussion around boards that deliver. In March, we will have John Gumi. John has sat on several boards, private, but largely sits on some of the public sector boards. And so he'll be speaking about boards that lead. When do you take charge? When do you partner? And when do you stay away? Some of us have been invited to boards that clearly we have seen may not be suitable given the perhaps political circumstances within. So how do you say no? How do you drive performance and accountability within public sector boards? How do you create a good balance between stakeholders' interests? And how do you lobby both within and without? And lastly, how do you have difficult conversations within the boardroom? One of the things John is good at is having really tough conversations. And one of the things he'll be challenging us is to, how do we stay or move away from our comfort zones? How do you take up some of those quote and unquote difficult committees that women shy away from? So that should be, again, a very interesting and challenging discussion in the month of March. And then lastly, in April, we'll have Patricia. Patricia has been an ambassador with the Women on Boards, and she'll be speaking to us, around how do you play the game as a woman? Do you go in there with the hard skills? How do you use soft power to be able to get what you need? Can you be assertive without being obnoxious? How do you engage in smart self-promotion? You're coming in with some skills. How do you bring those out within the board discussions? And what are the do's and the don'ts within the boardroom? Do you serve tea because you're the only woman who sits in the board? How do you say no, respectively? So that will mark our journey. And in the end, we'll have a celebration, a graduation of those who have gone through the 6 months. And it is our hope that we will invite the Chief Justice of the country, Madam Kome, who will then be able to grace the occasion and talk to us around winning both at work and in the family. So it should be a good 6 months. And so we urge ladies, please join in. There will be times when we'll have webinars. There will be some reading that we'll ask you to do as well. But let's engage and let's discuss and bring out these topics and learn from each other. Hopefully, having gone through this session, we will become mentors to those that are coming after us. So without further ado, allow me to introduce our panelists this morning. And today we have two ladies. I will introduce Rosemary first, and then Christine will come a little later. So Rosemary Odo has over 25 years working experience, 19 of which have been top management in sectors such as professional auditing, oil and gas, manufacturing, not-for-profit, and pension. Her previous employers include PKF Kenya, Chevron Corporation, as well as the JKU Art Staff Retirement Scheme. She is a member of Women on Boards, ISPAC and ACCA, and holds a BSc in accounting. She has served on several boards as well as board committees for the last 7 years and has previously worked at CEO level, dealing with several board members. Currently, she serves as an independent director and audit and risk committee chair for Cian Roses Group. So I'm hoping, Rosemary, you came with some flowers for these wonderful ladies who've joined the session today. When she's not doing all these things, she actually loves to dance, and she dances to hip hop. So maybe we'll see you at the Women on Boards luncheon on Friday, and you can show us some of those moves, Rosemary. So karibu sana, Rosemary. We'll give you 10 minutes to talk about today's topic, developing leadership on boards, matters culture, leading across generations, and why board diversity matters. So welcome, Rosemary. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Rose, and I'm surprised you let out my little secret. I'm very happy to be here with you all this morning. And so I'll just quickly take you through, and I'll begin with culture and gender differences in leadership. And we begin with the culture impact on the leadership style that a leader will adopt. There's nothing wrong with leaders having differing leadership styles, and this is bound to be. What is key is that no matter the leadership style adopted, the leadership must have the qualities required of effective leadership. This includes being visionary, dynamic, trustworthy, providing encouragement, empathy, and being proactive. Examples of aspects of culture that can impact on leadership style include conservatism, which could result in a leadership approach that is too risk-averse, with golden opportunities being shunned. In addition, the status quo will be favored by such leaders, with resistance to change being a consequence. Now, gender impact on leadership style. Let's consider just a couple of factors focusing mainly on women. Women leaders tend to be more communicative. It is estimated that on average they speak 20,000 words a day compared to 7,000 for men. They are therefore more likely than men to countercheck that their message has been received as intended. This approach is more likely to result in correct implementation by the recipient. Women also tend to be more empathetic. This is particularly important in dealing with stakeholders, be it employees or the local community, who may be adversely affected by the activities of an organization and could take action, thereby denting the image of the entity. Communication and empathy are without doubt one of the key factors in effective leadership. So I say kudos to women on these aspects. Now, let's look at some negatives. Clearly, culture and gender do overlap. Having said some nice things about women, I have to point out that there are gender aspects that work against women in the leadership realm. Many women, thankfully not all, tend to shy away from being assertive. Cultural norms in many societies dictate that women should be amenable, with assertiveness being automatically being a preserve of men. Yet assertiveness is an important characteristic for a leader to possess. However, half the battle is won if a woman is conscious of this tendency. It will put them in a better position to work towards departing from it. Practice makes permanent, so keep practicing assertiveness. The next heading is leading across generations, common threads and differences.
Yeah.
For board leadership to be effective, it must work to cater for the needs of the various generations at the workplace in order to ensure optimal output from the combined workforce. Effective leadership needs to be accommodative of views of both the senior and the younger generations for the greatest benefit to the organization to be achieved. Let's talk about the commonalities across the generations. All generations have the common goal of achieving success for the organization. They are also all interested in promotion, save for the last generation, Generation Z, who are still at the early stages of work. Each generation wants to feel that they have valuable input that is required for success of the organization. The more experienced generations have a lot of knowledge to pass on to the younger generations, but there's also a lot that they can learn from the younger generations. It is the younger generations that have the digital expertise that is much needed in business, more so today. They also provide vigor and energy, and we look at issues with a new eye. The interaction between the younger and the senior generations is a symbiotic one, and workplace mentoring and reverse mentoring should be encouraged by leaders. Most importantly, all generations want the company to succeed. Let's look at differences. Differences at work comprise mainly of work styles and ethics, values, and skills. The baby boomers born between 1946 and 64 tend to stay in the same field and job for longer. Their identity is defined by their profession and promotions. The main communication mode is the email. This generation found typewriters at work, and these were used by secretaries and typists. This generation then later interacted with computers when they showed up. At that point, computers were big desktops that remained at the workplace. Working from home was not a norm at all. It was a one-off, and even then it involved carrying papers in a folder. Many a time, the computers were shared with colleagues, a situation that changed with the early digital technological advancements. Generation X were born between 1965 and 1980. These are more independent and are more likely to walk away from inflexible workplaces. They do embrace technology, including smartphones, emails, laptops, and tablets. Video conferencing and team-based digital workspaces meet their flexibility requirements and impact positively on their output and work morale. Then we have the millennials, whose parents fall in the baby boomers and the Generation X. Now, millennials, or who we refer to as Generation Y, born 81 to 96, crave interaction, feedback, and collaboration. They're highly informal, appreciate flexi time, and would abhor a clocking in and clocking out system. They're driven by purpose, learning, and growth. Many of them embrace technology in their childhood, hence text and social media form part of the main modes of communication. They expect to climb the corporate ladder sooner rather than later, and will change jobs if the prospect of promotions looks distant. Lastly, we have Generation X, born after 96. They're competitive and are attracted by tech-savvy workplaces that provide a personal experience such as video meetings. The eldest of this generation is now only 24. Therefore, more details on their preferences will unfold with time. The last heading is why diversity in boards matters. Diversity encompasses age, gender, skills, ethnicity, experience, and religion. Now, the importance: addressing challenges using diverse perspectives will result in better quality decisions as more angles will have been considered. The effect of groupthink is therefore avoided. Business is increasingly becoming complex and the environment proving to be fluid. COVID is a good real-life example. Consideration of different opinions inevitably ensures a more comprehensive thought process. Additionally, stakeholders are diverse and would therefore benefit from interacting with a board that is also encompassing diversity. Businesses operate with various key functions or departments within the organization structure, with each function calling for a specific type of expertise at board level. For instance, a company that is highly product or brand-based would need to have a marketer on its board. Lastly, a diverse board is a confident board. They know that they are well equipped, possessing within themselves diverse areas of expertise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. I think that sets the scene for the discussion this morning. Thank you for bringing out the three aspects around gender, culture, and the different generations within the workplace. So to continue the conversation, I'd like to introduce Christine Sabo. I've known Christine now for a while. We worked together in KPMG almost 20 years ago. So let her face not defile you in terms of her age. She is quite an experienced person that I've known for a while. So she's currently the managing partner at Sabo and Associates based in Nairobi, Kenya, servicing many financial advisory needs in Africa. She has over 21 years experience gained in audit, accounting, special investigations, risk management, banking, governance, and digital finance. So it will be interesting to hear a bit of experience around that, Christine. She's passionate about mentoring young people and professionals in operational risk accounting and currently serves on boards of 2 listed entities, a hospital and a microfinance. So Christine, karibu sana. We'll give you about 2 minutes just to share your thoughts before we get into the Q&A session. So welcome, Christine.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rose. Thanks for making me feel young. Really grateful, ladies, this morning to meet together. And what I'm looking forward to more is just an encouragement on with one another on where we are. What I would like to just look at is just 2 key things on leadership. One is leadership is built on relationships. So as Rosemary has shared, it's important that we understand that we need to take some time to have relationships with people. And I wanted to just bring this out with a book that I've just registered to read. It's a very, very interesting book. It's called The Business Model Navigator. I'll probably just post it in the chat when I'm done, by Oliver Gassman. Now, this book talks about 55 business models for companies that are successful. And then it goes ahead to group the companies that have similar models that have been successful. And Amazon is listed as, in one of the groups. And the companies that are listed together with Amazon is Airbnb, American Express, iPhone, iPod. I'm just trying to read the ones that we might be familiar with: Cisco, Dogepost, Dropbox, Facebook, Google. If you notice, each of them are companies that may have grown their electronic business very significantly and very successfully, and have a specific culture and nature. So one thing that is very, very important is that leadership is built on relationships. If you read the stories of each of these companies, it's really about the relationships that their founders started with. So I think as ladies, we're very good with relationships. I feel it's a skill that we can use to build ourselves as corporate leaders. So that's one, that leadership is built on relationships. But secondly, that you've got to build it also on what you teach yourself. So as Rose introduced me, I have experience in various fields and various sectors, but one of the things I have learned is I have to keep learning. You may have heard the story about Steve Jobs, you may have heard the story about Amazon, but I find that I still have to keep learning and understanding. What do different writers say about why this person was successful? Sometimes I'll see clips where it tries to identify how the founder started. So it's very important that leaders are readers. Occasionally when I'm in some of the meetings, committee meetings or board meetings or organizations that I'm impacting, I actually try to think, what can I give this board that is different? What debate can I bring to the table that is different? Because the board papers, everybody has the board papers. So you already have the information that is in those papers. So I feel it's just important that I keep myself up to date. I understand how other people have been successful, because they always say there's nothing new under the sun. But how you execute it is what makes a difference. So my second point and final point is really that leaders should be readers, and as ladies, we should read. We have our first strength, which is relationships. We need to maximize on the relationships and really genuine relationships. And then secondly, that we read so that we can also be able to bring something to the table. And also when other people bring conversations to the table, we can also participate effectively. So back to you, Rose. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Reading. Learning and then learning and learning again. Okay, so now we get to have Rosemary and Christine on the hot seat. And we'll start off with you, Christine. You talked about books. And as we know, Peter Drucker says, culture eats strategy for lunch. And technology, I think, for breakfast, for dinner. So from your experience, having sat on several boards, I think at one time you'd mentioned that you'd sat on about 7 boards. What do you think are the tips for creating a culture that promotes leadership within boards? What has been your experience in that space?
Okay, so in boards, of course, the chairman is the lead of your board, and the chairman is a very, very important role within the board. The interesting thing with boards is you meet quarterly. You may have a board or 2 that may meet 6 times a year, but generally boards will meet quarterly. And then the meeting you're having is in the committees and then in your main board. So your committees may be 2 to 3 hours and the main board will be 2 to 3 hours. So what does that tell you? In 3 months, you'll be talking for 4 hours. It's a very, very short time for an organization that is large, for an organization that has many staff, an organization that is complicated or, that has maybe branches. It's a very, very short time. So what is very important is what do we want to encourage in the board? As people say that strategy, it's that your culture can eat your strategy, but I would want to dare say that it's the reverse is also true, that your strategy can also eat your culture. And what does that mean? It means if your strategy is not aligned to where you want to go, then it's very difficult for you to develop the culture that will go towards that. And if your culture is not designed to help you grow, for instance, if you have a culture where your staff know that they'll come late, they won't get punished if they don't perform, actually you'll have a culture. However, it will not support the growth that you're looking for in terms of your strategy. So what I find is very interesting is leaders who are successful match the two. My experience in boards is because it's such a short time, each person sometimes comes with their own challenges, issues that they believe the management should sort out. So what is very important is to have a structured board, have a chairman who is focused on the goals, but very importantly, that they do not brush away any input from any director that would help the company ask the right questions. Remember, for boards, the important thing is to ask the right questions. What I find is sometimes it's very easy for you to want to run the organization, and yet you're only there for 4 hours per quarter. So it's very, very important as a board to build a culture that asks the right questions, gives management sufficient challenge and direction for the next 3 months. So my experience has been, I've sat in boards which have, very clear governance outlook. I've sat on boards where maybe we had an issue with the CEO and we had somebody acting. So people tended to be a bit more operational while you are recruiting the CEO. But what's very, very important is the boards that succeed are the ones that then take their people decisions quickly. So your strategy and your culture should be aligned, but leadership is very, very important. So you as an individual on a board should be able to say, guys, we need to focus ourselves back. Maybe we're getting too operational here. Let's focus ourselves back so that we focus on getting the right CEO, and then the CEO, we hold them accountable for the things that we need to do. So it's a really fine balance. It's 4 hours, 6 hours, every 3 months. It's not a long time to build the culture. So the boards that I've worked on that I have found very useful for me have an away day where each of the board members get to know each other, in a friendly manner, so that even as you're making those tough decisions and as you're leading your organization to greater heights, you know the person you're working with. A lot of times you may find yourself as an individual that you don't even know where your other board members work. You may see their profile on your website, but you've not really asked them, where did you work before this? What have you done? So taking some time to do that would be very, very useful. So that can build culture, because remember, culture is not like strategy where you can write and say, our culture is to get to know each other, but it is the heart of what drives your company. So culture is your heart and soul. Your strategy is your ABC on where you want to go, but you have to merge the two for to be effective. If you don't have the ABC, then it doesn't matter how good you are to each other. But if you don't have your heart and soul, then it will not be possible to do the ABC.
Thank you. Interesting around the reading and, you know, aspects to do with culture. So thank you, Christine, for that. Rosemary, you sit on a board for a family business. So Sian Roses is a family business, and you do sit, I believe, in the risk committee. Talk us through your experience around that. What have been some of the challenges that you face insofar as trying to bring some sense of governance in the business where the owner, you know, pretty much has control within that space? What has your experience been, and what can we as ladies who perhaps sit or are looking to set up boards for family-owned businesses learn from you as a result of your experience?
Thank you, Rose. Yeah, so basically, when you're sitting on a board of a family business, what that means is that systems might not be very formal, and you may have fewer board members than you might typically have on a company. So basically, what that means is that you're bringing fewer heads together to think through the business. And it also means that in a way, you will have to put in more time than you typically would put as a board member. So whereas you've got typically, say like on a listed company, you've got your quarterly board meetings, you might find that you're having to have more meetings in such a situation. But what that means also is that you have to be careful, because you're on the board, you're providing oversight, and you know, you're non-executive, so you're definitely not wanting to be involved in running of the business. But you will find that the investors will require more from you in terms of checking, you know, that all is okay, particularly in your area of expertise. So for example, I'm an accountant by profession. And so I find this heavy reliance on me by the investors, you know, in terms of, say, like, for example, the audited accounts, you know, have been done. You know, of course, you know, there's a meeting to be held with the auditors for them to present, you know, the accounts. But if there's no other, you know, finance person on that board, then you could easily find that there's a lot of reliance on you, you know, to see that the accounts are okay, are properly presented and all that. And so I have found myself definitely, for example, very, very involved in that area in terms of making sure that the financial statements are properly presented, that there's adequate disclosure. And besides that, I'd say there's close interaction with board members. And I think there's actually you end up having a closer relationship with board members than you might have, say, like on a company that's listed, because of that closer interaction. But yeah, I'd say all in all, it's a good experience, and it's very, very gratifying, because in such a company, you actually feel the effect that you have on the organization. Because what tends to happen is that you find there's a lot of scope for improvement. So you're actually able to show yourself and to actually impact on the organization and feel good, you know, that, you know, you've brought change, or you're bringing changes or improvements to the organization. Yeah, I think that's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Rosemary. Christine, you talked about your experience around, you know, digital finance, and given the millennials, you know, having grown up within that space, they would be the ones sort of almost leading or taking charge, you know, of the digital transformation initiatives, you know, within the various organizations. Talk to us about your experience in that, and how we can then use, you know, the younger generation to reverse mentor those of us that may have experience, more the technical experience within organizations.
Okay.
Your thoughts on that?
Okay, so you bring up an interesting question, Rose. I worked with Airtel Money, and we set up mobile money in Africa. And one of the things that we did is we not only focused on person-to-person transfer, but our desire was to look at mobile commerce. And for us to be able to get into mobile commerce, we needed to have partners that we would onboard as mobile commerce partners. And one of the organizations that we worked with very, very closely was Mode. And Mode had the youngest entrepreneurs. They had the youngest staff. We had meetings with the Africa board, and we would bring along, our partner. And I think their median age was actually 26. And they were able to work together with us to actually roll out the product throughout Africa. They did such a good job, and we actually went with them to India, which is a very, very interesting turn of events. And Rose, you mentioned reverse mentoring. I think what they did, because we gave them that opportunity, they actually did reverse mentoring, because India is very good in technology. For them to consider a vendor, they look at global vendors. And just because we were able to partner together with them and work together with them on the solutions that they were offering for airtime credit, we were able to actually export something, a talent from Africa into India. Because they said, we've tried to look at all the people in India and we've not found somebody who's got the mechanics of the product this way. So what I learned from that is, one is give an opportunity to the young people. Very, very interestingly is the young people do have the technology, they have the talent, they have the exposure. So it's important as a leader to give them an opportunity. Secondly, the experience they have, they may not have an experience of execution. So they'll have an experience with talent, with technology, but they may not have an experience with execution. So you want to match the experience you have with execution with their talent. So you've got to give them an opportunity. You partner with them to help, in building up your distribution. So their CEO was actually very passionate about allowing the young developers to come to the meetings with the Airtel Africa office, which I found really good because he then said, he would come to all the meetings, but he would let his staff talk, he would prepare them, he would take them through, how do you present to Airtel as we are pitching for this? And then we were able to work with them. So what it taught me is you can use the talent that they have. You may be in an execution role, like Rosemary said, maybe you're the CEO, you're the one who's responsible, on the direction of the company. Find a structured way to include them because you can learn a lot from them. So it's important to find a structured way. You can achieve a lot more when you find that structured way, and then you work with them on the execution, because sometimes they may not have the experience on execution, but what they really need is that opportunity. So it's important to give them that opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Christine. We have two follow-up questions for you. One is to do with, how do you ensure that you place yourself in a position where the interactions, as you mentioned, are just not big event, sort of quarterly, but are more frequent, especially as a woman serving in a quote unquote boys club. And the second question then is, you talked about, reading and building skills. So in your view, what are the must-have leadership skills for effective board membership in terms of both the hard skills, but also the soft skills around lobbying, board members to be able to rally around whatever initiative you have? So if you could follow up on those two questions, that would be great.
Okay, so maybe I can start with the skills that you need to have. The hard skills is your specific area of career. However, as Rosemary said, you may be running a family business, but you're the financial expert, within the board, and they may want to rely on you on that, even though you're responsible for say, business development. So the thing is, your hard skill is whatever career you are in, do it well. Take some time to train. It's a requirement for us as ISPAC members to make sure that we actually keep our professional hours. But then I like to do more than what the Institute expects from me, because the learning you have, nobody can take it away from you. So when you give a conversation, you're able to say, IFRS 20 says this, but it gives us options to do this and that. So what you tend to find is people say generic things. So sometimes people go to meetings and say generic things. As much as possible, because it's just 4 hours, it's important that your technical skills are good. They do say that when you get to the board level, it's not your technical skills that matter, it's actually your stakeholder engagement. However, your technical skills would be useful even as you guide management into a direction, or challenge them, or ask a question about what they're doing. Because the worst thing you would want is a situation where you ask a question and then management say, that's on page 22. So it's important. One of your hard skills is of course your experience, and keep yourself updated. But secondly, just take time to read the parts. I think it's something people underplay, but it can actually, sometimes when something happens in a company, people say, where was the board? Actually, the board was buried in the board pack. So it's just important that you take some time to read. I like to do that like on Saturday evenings, because I tend to find that's a day of the week, which is very rare that you will get interruptions from people, so that I can actually give proper attention to the company that I'm reviewing. But in terms of soft skills, there are certain things which you can ask your mentors or your peers. How do you think I sound? How did I sound? What I try to do in different boards is to look for someone who I can identify with, and then I tell them after the meeting, did I sound okay? Was I sounding lost? And those kind of things. I make myself vulnerable to them, so that they know that if they actually saw something, they'll be free to come and tell me. So I do make myself vulnerable to my fellow board members. Of course, you've got to be careful to identify the right one, who would be constructive, and hopefully it will be reciprocal, that they will say, they're happy for you to give them that. So soft skills is making yourself vulnerable, so that you can learn and grow. Otherwise, sometimes people might bear with you as a director and kind of hope your term gets finished very quickly. But you want to be in a position where you make relationships, make friends, so that people actually say, can we get an extension of Christine on this board? Because remember, at the end of the day, much as you're appointed individually and with the merit and with all the experience that you have, you're actually working as a team. So you want to also have a relationship where people feel we are happy to have this person on our team. So maybe I would say that. Sorry, Rose, I don't know if you can remind me the first one.
Sorry, I'm just. Sorry, Christine.
The first aspect.
Oh, the question was around. It was around. How do you ensure that you place yourself in a position where the interactions are just not at the board level in terms of the quarterly events,
okay,
but you have more frequent conversations, especially behind the scenes.
Okay. So I think maybe it can be linked a bit to the vulnerability. Generally, what I try to say is, as a board, you need to allow yourselves to be independent. So you don't want to be having Friday drink-ups every week with different board members, because your independence may be compromised. However, you can have some structured meetup meetings where you then just talk about, get to know the person. I think when you're making decisions with people, very, very important decisions, I think it's important that you actually understand one another and how you operate. That's very, very important. So I think, and I don't know what Rosemary may think about this, but I think you do need to allow that independence. But some of the examples I had given, like having an away day, you know, one weekend where the board members get to know each other personally. I just attended one last week. And one of the things I was deliberate about, because we were about 25 of us, and it's very easy for you to go for an away day and not speak to 3 or 4 directors. So what I did during that, it was actually an away week. What I did is every lunch and every dinner, I sat with different people. I deliberately, you know, went to sit on a different table so that I now get to understand somebody, get to, you know, find out what their thought process is, why do they think the way they do, and those kind of things. So, those interactions are good. Even just calling your fellow director to say, hi, I'm here, how are you, and what is up? I think that's quite important, so that you don't wait for the board meeting only. But very importantly is that you still maintain your independence so that you can be free to question and challenge things when you get to your formal meeting.
Thank you, Christine. We will allow you to grab a cup of water as we fire the last question to Rosemary this morning. Rosemary, they say the sum of the greater whole, that sometimes 1 + 1 doesn't have to be 2, it can actually be 3. So the question here is around, how do you leverage the competencies of individual board members so that then you are more effective as a team to navigate, you know, the external operating environment insofar as any threats or any opportunities that may arise in the business that you operate in? We know the flower business, for example, faced quite a bit of challenges during COVID. I mean, the country was shut down, you had flower productions going on, but yet as a board, you had to find ways of navigating that. So how do you harness the individual competencies of board members so that then 1 + 1 becomes 3 and not 2?
Thank you, Rose. Yeah, so basically, first of all, I think I want to agree with Christine. I absolutely agree what she's talking about, teamwork, and you know, for board members to interact even outside of meetings, because then if you understand each other, then you'll be able to also, I think, comprehend better the discussions that take place, you know, during the board meetings, because you understand the person better. You might actually be able to interpret more accurately what it is they're saying, and you know, you'll have a wider view of your own opinions as well. So basically, coming to your question, Rose, when we talk about leveraging various skills, it again touches on diversity, you know, where we're saying that a board should be diverse. You know, so like you can't have a board full of lawyers or a board, you know, full of accountants, then it doesn't help. So we leverage these skills, first of all, by making sure that you've got the various skills that are required on the board. And in selecting your board members, you'll need to look at the business. What are the activities of the business? What are the main functions of the business? Because that is what will drive the expertise that you require on the board. The best way to leverage these skills is to basically look at the challenges that are coming to the company, and see where they fall. You know, so for example, if the company is having, say, financial challenges, then of course, then you will be looking at the skills of the person on the board who is an accountant. If there's suddenly a lot of competition coming in and, you know, sales are under threat, then you'll be looking at the board member who's a marketer. However, generally, that said, all the skills need to come together a lot of the times. And I'll say, for example, when you've got a crisis, for example, like COVID, then what we're saying there is you're going to bring all the skills together, because the various areas are all impacted on. cash flow is impacted on. Maybe your sales have gone down. And so, this is a time that you need to conserve, especially cash. You need to stall your capex. You might need to buy only strictly the capital expenditure that's urgent. Then on the marketing side, the marketing person on the board will be looking to make sure that the company is closely interacting with its customers, because you don't want to lose touch of your customers. So, you need that extra contact with them, calling them, finding out if they're okay, finding out, what can you do for them? What products can you push, encouraging them. And as well, on the supply side, there's got to be then contact with your suppliers, because you don't want to find suddenly that your supply chains, have broken down and you're not able to do business. Then, of course, you've got somebody on the board whose expertise is in HR. That person will be able to, see that during such a time there is, closer touch with the employees, to find out are they okay, because this is a time they could be under stress, and fearful of losing their jobs. So basically, apart from the issue of leveraging skills, then there'll be the issue of everybody coming together to respond to, a very complex and quickly changing environment. So for example, when COVID came, I think the first information we got was that COVID is spread by touch. So there's a lot of cleaning, frantic cleaning of doorknobs and everything. And then suddenly information was out that COVID is airborne. Then quickly, that there's emphasis on masks and all that. So the environment can change very, very quickly, and the board needs to respond as a team very, very quickly. And that's where, the work from home came in, and there was the office protocols, masks, social distancing. And so basically, during such a time as well, then, board members need to be more reachable, more available. And generally, when we talk about the various skills, it's also very important for the members of the board to keep their skills relevant. And this is easy if you're a member of a particular professional body, then you're doing your continuous professional development, and that keeps your information up to date. Yeah, I think basically that's what I have to say. And boards, of course, need to be open to urgent decision making during such a time. That you're reachable, that you're available, and that you can come together. Click of a finger and say, there's an urgent decision here, and we've got to make it now. So basically, it's just bringing all the skills together, knowing that there's somebody to look at, particular areas, but also coming in to support each other as a board. Bring your skills together, into one team. Yeah.
Thank you, Rosemary. I can see that time is quickly flying, so I can't wait to have the next mentorship session, because some of the questions that are being asked this morning will be covered by some of the mentors in the subsequent months. And so, Christine, we'll give about 2 or 3 minutes to answer 2 questions from the members as you give your closing remarks, and then we can be able to give a few announcements before we close the session in the next 6 minutes. So, Christine, you have 2 questions. One is, how do you handle a weak chair, within the board setting? And 2, how do you navigate being perceived as being emotional, especially when you have a differing opinion about a certain issue within the board? So if you could answer those 2 questions and give us your closing remarks, then we can move on to announcements.
Okay, so in fact, I like the question on how to handle a weak chair. I've had the privilege of working with very diverse chairs, some who are really good, some who are in the middle. And one of the things I quickly learned is that you need to support the chair, because any one of you as directors can be nominated as a chair in the event that something happens to your chair. So what is very important is that you need to support the chair. How do I support the chair? If I'm in a committee, we should make sure that our committee handles all our matters as detailed as possible, so that when it gets to the main board, it's really more an issue of discussing the 3 or 4 alternatives that has been provided and the reasons for that. So there's a chair who was not business, they had not run a business, they were not a business leader, but they were a leader in a society that they were in. And what the chair allowed each one of us to do was to bring our expertise into the board. So they would call and ask us to do a research paper on behalf of the board, which I would volunteer and make sure that I do, because I understood where they were coming from, that much as they're the chair, they understood that. So if you have a weak chair who's willing, please support them, research, without saying, I'm the one who did that for the chair. I think it's also important to protect the chair's position by doing the work that you can do to support them so that your entire board is actually progressive. If you have one who's weak and not willing to hear, I think it's really just to do the same thing and then do not focus on bringing out the chair's weakness in the meeting. Focus on saying, Chair, I believe if we looked at this, this is how it would be. So look for ways to support your chair, but also look for ways to slowly guide them into the right direction. And with that, you would have to do a lot of stakeholder management with your colleagues, so that if you're all in agreement, it will be almost very difficult for the chair to think of something different. So very important is, if they're willing, you can help them. And if they're not, then you've got to do a lot more stakeholder management with your colleagues so that you make your board solid. And then secondly, how do you navigate being seen as aggressive or emotional? I think sometimes if you're firm, sometimes people think being emotional is maybe talking at a very loud voice, but you may not be talking at a loud voice, but you're very firm. And sometimes people can perceive that to be aggressive or emotional. But I think you need to bring your freshness to the board. Very, very importantly, is just to be respectful. I think at the board level, it's not the place for you to say, I don't think you know what you're doing. I hear some board members telling the CEO that, but I think there's a place for that, because that should be within an appraisal process. So what I find is it's the way you can manage perception of aggressiveness or being emotional is where you manage the subjective things. The objective things are very clear. If they haven't met the profit target, he hasn't met the profit target. But if it's something that's soft skills, it's important that you think through how you want to bring that issue out so that you are not perceived as being emotional. Like saying you always shout at the staff, like maybe you tell the CEO. So it's just important that you keep yourself focused on those subjective things, and for this soft things, come with facts, don't come with hearsay, come with facts. And hopefully they will not perceive you to be aggressive or emotional. They'll just understand that you're a director who has very good intentions for your organization. And as I wrap up, Rose, one of the things I didn't mention, because somebody talked about the interacting in the boys club. What I do, because I don't go out in the evenings with guys unless it's an official function, I actually make them know I'm available for breakfast. So I've had chairmen who call me and they say, Onsek, are you ready for breakfast meeting when they want to consult on something? And I'm available, I'll come at 7 o'clock and meet them. So you can also look for them. Don't only look for the ladies in the board, also look for your male colleagues and interact with them so that you get to know them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Christine and Rosemary, for your words of wisdom. I think the ladies are saying, if you could please post the book that you talked about, so that then we can go out and buy it. Hopefully, within the mentorship sessions, we could actually have a session where we review the book and have conversations around some of the learnings in there. They say you cannot transit wisdom and insight to another person. The seed is already there. A good teacher touches the seed, allowing it to wake up, to sprout, and to grow. So thank you, ladies, for touching that seed in us this morning. We do look forward to having you on the mentorship session. We look forward to hearing from you again. And we have said that we will post the recording of today's session within the WhatsApp group. So look out for it and let's continue to engage. We do have a few announcements before we close in the next minute or so. So Kantai, if you could please project those two announcements. One is we have the 8th annual conference, which is a virtual conference that will be taking place tomorrow and Thursday. We have a list of speakers, both locally and internationally, who will be speaking at the event. Our keynote speaker will be the PS, Zainab Hussain, who's the PS State Department for Correctional Services. She'll be speaking to us on several topics. And as you can see the screen, we have Patrick Obath, we have John Gumi, we have Omboy Mbesa, Lucy, interesting conversations that will be happening virtually. So please register and join us for the 8th annual conference that will be taking place. The other exciting event that I can't wait for, not because I'm going to be wearing a very nice dress of the day, but because of what will be going on, that is the first annual Women on Boards ceremony that will be held on the 26th of November at Movenpick Residences in Nairobi. It will be a luncheon where we will be coming to celebrate women who have done interesting things in their spaces. So please join us for the luncheon. It will be a chance for you not only to meet the ambassadors who will be mentoring you, but also other women as well, who will be speaking about their experiences. It should be an opportunity for you if you're in business, perhaps to meet that one person that you've been always looking to unlock, your business opportunity. So let's join us, ladies. We do have a dress code. It's going to be black and purple or gold. So those high heels, the dresses, bring them out and let's have the luncheon at Movenpick Residences. Allow me at this juncture to say a big thank you to all of you who've taken the time this morning to be with us. We do appreciate the time that you have taken. Rosemary and Christine, thank you very much for joining us. Christine, the one thing that I realized that I didn't know about you, that I discovered, is that you're very good at DJing house parties. So we should be looking forward to seeing some of those skills at the luncheon on Friday. Thank you to the secretariats led by Mrs. Wanga. Hannah and Kantai, you do a wonderful job and we do appreciate you. We may not say it enough, but we want to thank you. To the leadership of Women on Boards, thank you very much for giving us the platform to engage, to interact, to learn from each other. And please sign up for the mentorship program. It should be an exciting journey. My name is Rose Sang. I have been your moderator this morning, and I look forward to other engagements with you. Thank you very much. Keep safe and God bless. Asante sana.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.